Hey there, Mary Sheila here with Occidental Nutrition, and I just finished teaching my mindful eating class. And I feel like I want to share with you just kind of what we were talking about in class today, because I feel like it's very relevant for making change and making significant and consistent change, right? And I'll preface it this way first. One of the participants was asking about, hearing all this conflicting information, which, right, we're all hearing conflicting information all the time. And what I really kind of had to step back and look at and say, sometimes like I might be recommending people to eat breakfast and other people are recommending to intermittent fast. And there's all kinds of different ways of really seeing things. And sometimes we have to see what might resonate for us. And sometimes we might have to realize, well, maybe I do need to try something different because what I've been doing hasn't been working. But regardless, a lot of sometimes a lot of things can be right, even if they're different, but it's really consistency, right? You could do this diet or that diet or this diet, but it becomes that consistency, and sometimes we don't want to feel like we have to do a diet, but we want to be consistent with our habits and our foods and our rhythms in the body. And what I want to talk a little bit about today, though, is like what happens when we have that turning point. Maybe it's that transformation that really makes us say, I need to change, right? And that's one of the things that I truly believe in the work that I do is first and foremost, I see myself as a teacher. I love to teach, right? I love to teach. I love to teach so that when somebody knows they, like, oh, my doctor said I need to eat, diet and lifestyle and exercise, but it's like, where do I start? What does it mean? And when I can explain it in a way that you're like, oh, okay, I understand why, I should drink water or maybe eat breakfast or do this thing or do that thing. And you start to understand how that foods or those habits meet your physiology and what you can do to support your physiology. Whoa, that light bulb moment is awareness, and then awareness can become that turning point, right? So it's that turning point or that moment of transformation. And most change doesn't happen just because somebody told you to do something, right? It happens the moment that you see something clearly, you understand something clearly, and you just can't unsee it, right? That saying always makes me laugh. Like, I can't unsee that, but you can't unsee it. It's like, oh, okay. Like if I'm struggling with blood sugar issues, this is what happens when I overeat sugar, right? I can't unsee that. Like every time I do that, right? And usually though, if we're struggling with health issues, and again, it can be grand and big or they can be small, but we keep doing something, right? We have a pattern. It's like we're unconsciously it's just what we've always done, right? It's like, I always eat cereal for breakfast, even though I like to call cereal dessert, right? It's just what I do. It's just what I've always done, right? We repeat the same food or the same lifestyle choices, or the same late night choices that we make. And we just kind of normalize the symptoms that those things might bring us. Like we might always feel crashes or tiredness in the afternoon or after certain meals, or we might always just think having super strong sugar craving is just a part of life and there's nothing you can do, right? We might always feel like, lots of mood swings and unstable mood and energy, right? Or maybe bloating. It's like, oh, I've always been bloated, right? Or poor sleep, right? So we just get used to these symptoms. Anxiety is another one. And at this stage, right, everything we're doing is just automatic as well as our symptoms. And we don't see it as a problem because it's just part of our habits. Like I do this and I feel this way, but the next day we go back and we do that same thing and we feel that same way, right? We might not even realize that anything's wrong because we don't really have that awareness, right? But then we have that awareness. And I always like to call this, it's like the awareness is like the door opens or we see the door, we open the door, we see the path. we're like, oh, okay. So that path is there. This is like one of the most important things when we have that awareness, right? And again, we might already be healthy, but we have awareness about like how the body might work when it comes to like our thyroid gland or our adrenals or sleep patterns or blood sugar, right? Like, we hopefully are always learning, or we're always growing, we're always deepening our ability to maintain and support our body and our physiology and our vitality, right? So it's like, oh, we have this moment of awareness, of curiosity. And it might be like, oh gosh, every time I eat sugar, like I feel anxious. Or every time I feel this, eat this other thing or stay up too late, this happens the next day. Every time I drink alcohol, this happens. And we start to realize like that habit, that pattern is not working for me. We start to realize like the pleasure is short and the cost is high. I was at a New Year's Eve party, and one of my friends said, I'm going to go get some champagne so I can have a headache tomorrow and feel like crap. And I thought, oh, gosh, that's one way to say it, right? And it's not so much judgment as it is like collecting data, right? And I talk about that a lot in my community. It's like, hey, we collect data, and then we can make new choices. So we can observe what we're doing. We're not criticizing ourselves. We're collecting information. We're not failing, We're like, okay, this is how this feels. But when we have that awareness, when we've opened that door, the path is in front of us. It's a fork in the road. It's a new path. There's new clarity. And it's an opportunity for us to make a new choice, right? Again, once we see that pattern, we can't unsee it, but now we have a choice to make, right? We can deal with it later. We can start it on Monday. We can wait till the next month. We can say we're too busy, right? We can eat it or do the action despite knowing what the outcome will be for us physically, emotionally, mentally, clarity-wise, productivity-wise. And we also might still do the thing and then feel frustrated with ourselves, feel guilty, feel shame, right? All those things. Or we might go like, oh my gosh, I really understand what this does to me. I want to start choosing differently. I don't want to keep betraying myself. I don't want to keep self-sabotaging myself. I want to do things different. So the transformation isn't really like, I'm not going to eat sugar anymore. I'm not going to drink alcohol anymore. I'm not going to do this thing. It's actually having more integrity for ourselves, like sticking up for ourselves, right? And that's a great way to think about it, right? It's not so much like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's like, I'm going to take better care of myself. I'm going to treat myself with more respect and self-care so that I can reach the goals that I have. And then it becomes an identity shift, right? We start to see ourselves and our choices differently. And this is really like, kind of like the gold of the situation. And this is where mindful eating becomes powerful, right? So we might realize like sugar or alcohol or gluten or anything like that just doesn't work for us. We start to know our body. We trust ourselves. We trust our decisions, right? I just was reading my client notes the other day, and it was like, I love gluten so much that I've eaten it my whole life, even though it's made me feel like crap. And this person is like, I am not eating it anymore. I really get it now, right? But that was what she said a couple months ago. Or I always think of my mom with this. I'm one of 7 kids. And so there was always a lot of birthday parties and celebrations. I think my mom made dinner for like 11 people every night. It's a lot of food. And I remember every time there would be a birthday and we would be passing out cake or dessert, she would say, oh, no, thanks. I've had enough sugar in my lifetime. That was a pretty clear, simple way to say, no, thank you. And that's another clear way to say the reminder that no is a complete sentence, right? So we're not really resisting the food. We're just aligning with ourselves, right? And again, sometimes people can be pushy, but it's like, no, sugar doesn't work for me anymore. I've had enough sugar in my life. No, thank you. Thanks anyways, right? Because we know our body, we trust that choice, and we're aligned with the goals that we have, right? So it isn't really restriction, it's that knowledge, it's self-respect for ourselves. And yeah, it can be hard, right? And again, sometimes we have to then build in, we have to integrate that. How do we integrate that? We integrate, I'm not saying that word right, with, the consistent habits. And it is rarely linear. Like, you're not like, okay, I'm not going to eat sugar. And you're just like Miss Perfect or Mr. Perfect for the rest of your life. Heck no. If it was that easy, then I probably wouldn't be a nutritionist, right? Occasional re-choosing might happen. We might sometimes be like, it's Thanksgiving, I'm gonna have pumpkin pie, or it's somebody's birthday, or it's my birthday and I want to have this blah blah blah, or whatever. But even when we choose that, or even if we do it when we didn't think we would, we're compassionate with ourselves. We're not shaming ourselves, right? We have faster recovery because we're committed in that new way. So that consistency, right? And sometimes we have to look at that high level, like, what do I want for my health? What do I want for my health? Like, I want to feel energized and strong, and I want to sleep good and have good energy and be able to do, fun things and hike and travel and right. And like enjoy my life. My daughter's married. She might have kids soon. I want to be a grandma, right? I want to have vitality for that. It's so weird to say that, but that is true. But I do have some other little grandkids from my awesome stepdaughter. So it's so fun. And it's fun to have good energy for it, right? Now, the pattern, what do you keep repeating, right? What do we all know, when we're like that, like little regret. But then when if you take the time to think about that, what do you notice? What do you observe that in your body? How do you observe that? Like, how does that feel? How does that make you feel? And then, like, if you can really sit with that, like what, and even if right now you're like, maybe you're thinking about it, but maybe when you're in the next moment of doing that and you remember this talk and you're like, oh yeah, look at me doing this habit, and I did not feel, this is not how I want to feel. This is not what I want to be doing. Now that's your like kind of choice point, right? How do I want to do it differently? How do I want to identify? Like, who am I? What does this say about who I am? Like, I want to be a healthy person, right? I want to be full of vitality. And then just know, like, nobody's perfect. So how am I going to return to myself when I either forget? I always say, like, catching myself in the act, like, oh, I'm eating, how do I want to, return to myself? I always say, like, I'll just give you an example, like when we catch ourselves in the act, right? I say there's 3 doors. Door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. Want to hear the doors? Door number 1 is, let's call it food, right? Like, let's say I'm trying to just eat meals and I'm not trying to snack and graze, and I'm catching myself in the act of just like having a snack, like maybe it's some chips or chocolate or whatever. And I say, am I hungry? Okay, that's door number 1. I'm going to like, am I hungry? And if I am hungry, I'm going to like, door number 2, right? I'm going to get a little plate. I'm going to put some food on the plate. I'm going to make sure there's a little protein. I'm going to sit myself down and I'm going to eat it. Okay. I think I kind of went out of order, but if I'm not hungry, I'm going to say, you don't need to eat that right now. You are not hungry. Put it away, close the cupboard. You can have it later, right? I could tell myself, hey, you can have that later when you're hungry. You can have that later with lunch or after dinner. Door number 2 is like, yes, I am hungry and I'm going to eat that right now. Do you want to know what door number 3 is? Door number 3 is you recognize it, you're not hungry, and you don't want to sit down, and you just say, F it, and you eat it anyway, right? Because that's going to happen. You're going to be like, oh, well, I don't care. I really want this, blah, 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 right? And then we might have the little regrets afterwards. But I still feel like that can be a bit of a win because you're still in awareness and you're like, okay, I still did the thing. I'm not going to beat myself up, but I'm going to do better, right? So that is mindfulness, right? That is the path of mindfulness. And mindfulness and mindful eating is something I've been teaching for a really long time, like at the clinic that I work at for like 11 or so years. But it's really been fun exploration of like so many things, mindfulness. And mindful eating to me is not just, awareness. It's also that noticing and that learning about how food meets our physiology and how our body works. Because again, if I can have that aha or give people that aha of like why, A plus B equals C, and they can realize that maybe A and B are some of their habits and foods, and they can make changes and get a better outcome, then they're going to be more motivated to do that. So that's the teaching part. I'm teaching mindful eating in my Vitality Club this month. I could put a link to the waiting list down there. And if you wanted to grab my protein cheat sheet, if you don't already have it, I do believe that like when we have good balanced meals and we make sure we build our meals around our protein, I'm not talking about overeating protein, but making sure there's protein in each meal. Protein, like we are protein. So we need protein to rebuild. We also need protein to support our neurotransmitters, to help us to feel grounded and feel calm and feel like we aren't craving too much sugar. And that right there can really help with us making good choices, right? It's the difference of like, maybe staying up too late or not sleeping well, waking up late and like just, grabbing a bagel and coffee and there's no protein. And then having more cravings later in the day as a result. Whereas, if we have a good first meal that is built around protein, and then we have, the next few meals that are balanced, we're feeding the body and the body's like, all right, I got what I need. I can do it, rather than it being kind of more stressed out and really trying to hold everything together. Okay, so that's my mindful eating rant for today, and fresh off of my mindful eating class. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe if you already are not, or if you are not already, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.